I have decided, with the help of AI, to title my part of our presentation Matergenesis. Here we have an overview of my visual thesis development timeline. Moving in, we have the initial brainstorming and the majority of my lit review in this first section. I decided it would be far too easy for me to assume what this alternate timeline would look like, so I made sure to do an extensive lit review. I began with the question, how might it be different? This helped me to formulate my first ChatGPT question. All chat questions are marked with this small purple question mark in the top left corner. I utilized a list for the response the chat returned. Some of the main points of interest here are gender equality, balance of power and resources, differences in cultural values, women as spiritual leaders, economic empowerment of women, conflict resolution, focusing on mediation and diplomacy, and so on. Before going any further, I wanted to clarify some terms. I also wanted to know the history of matriarchal societies, giving a reference point for this new timeline. I asked ChatGPT for definitions of patriarchal and matriarchal societies. I also asked for any information on past and/or current matriarchal societies. I found 3 examples of matrilineality, where the line of inheritance is passed through the mother, and which, funny enough, spell check insisted I meant to type patrilineality. I could find no evidence of a total matriarchal society in existence today, or in history. As you can see, the topic is a heated one. My next step was to better understand the differences between matriarchy and patriarchy. Utilizing ChatGPT, I dug into what separates these gendered hierarchies. I formed a Venn diagram to show what I found. Not a lot of new content here. I did think it was worth noting that where matriarchy holds an emphasis on female spirituality and wisdom, patriarchy decides to limit women's rights. So why patriarchy? I wanted to better understand the dominance of patriarchy in the world we know. The information I got back was dense, so I decided to create a concept map. Starting with patriarchy's dominance in the center, I branched out to main points, leading into their supporting examples. Biological differences, men are stronger, the conditioning we receive socially and through educational systems that forces gender norms, power and control such as pay gaps to reinforce the status quo, lack of representation in leadership roles, legislation keeping women from voting, owning property, inheritance laws, all of the main world religions worshiping male deities, and on and on. Much of my research up to this point seemed to call out economic dependence as the major culprit for patriarchy's persistence, so I leaned into this for my next question. I created a hierarchical diagram to show my findings. We can see a significant amount of repetition here from the concept map. New to this imagined matriarchal timeline are social safety nets, reduction or elimination of gender-based violence, removal of the retirement gap, and full health care and reproductive autonomy. Synthesizing the information gathered in this portion of the project, I formed what I will refer to later in the presentation as the universal prompt. This prompt will always be applied moving forward to maintain context of the overall project. The next section will delve deeper into my specific categories of ecology, religion, and art. Starting with ecology, my fundamental question was, would life thrive in a matriarchal world? The insights gathered in response probed how ecological systems might diverge from our known reality. As you can see, the language highlights conservation, renewal, local sustainability, and the various justifications for these changes. We can observe the emergence of gender-inclusive language, equity, and a stronger emphasis on interconnection. The eco list led me to ponder extinct species and their potential resurgence within our divergent timeline. In this alternate timeline, humans would likely prioritize balance, and thus extinct species, due to human actions, might still thrive in their natural environments. I created an extinction timeline to visually represent the animals we know are now extinct because of human choices. From Steller's sea cow, the first extinction on human record, hunted and exterminated within 30 years of its discovery, to the thylacine, known as the Tasmanian tiger, a carnivorous marsupial. A couple of these creatures, like the Sumatran rhino, are considered critically endangered as they no longer have a habitat in nature. And these three are considered functionally extinct, meaning they still exist, but in such numbers that they are doomed to die out, like the North White rhino, that only has 2 females alive today, the last male, Sudan, having died in 2018. This is not a complete list by far, but I believe it sets the tone. Moving into religion, I once again asked my question of how might it look different? Keep in mind that every question you are seeing and the information that follows is held within a single enclosed chat. This is critical to establishing theme and maintaining context. Here we see goddess-centered spirituality, rituals emphasizing celebrations of life, valuing cooperation, strong female representation in mythos, conflict resolution emphasizing dialogue and reconciliation, harmony with nature, and so on. Reading through this list got me wondering, what might a female or matriarchal-centered creation story look like? I submitted my question to the chat, and this is what returned. You can see much of the same language repeated from previous inquiry, now pieced together in story form. Poetic and visual language is scattered throughout the creation story. Moving into the art section, I start with my same question, how could it look different? We see activism for the first time here. Redefining beauty standards is also new language. Okay, so here is where I begin to use the language and responses in the chat to create prompts, creating the first Midjourney images. Everything you see here is AI generated in various ways. I won't go into each detail, but just to give you a taste, here we have a visual from a prompt imagining an art installation in nature from our imagined universe. This one here is an art installation imagined in a gallery space. Now we head into the mapping phase, which will sort each category, compiling the prompts to be used for our final imagery. This will give structure and create a system that will help me build out the final prompts. Here you can see the full spread. This is everything that will make up each prompt and the imagery that follows. Just as an example, we will take a closer look at the category Ethics and Spirituality. The prompt would be created using the language found in each successive block, here shown from left to right. So the initial ChatGPT prompt might read something like this. Write me a prompt for Midjourney about ethics and spirituality with a renewed focus on nature spirituality through enhanced connection, spiritual leadership, prevalence of nature-based spiritual practices, and integration of spirituality with environmental responsibility as it relates to, and then the universal prompt that we saw before would be added so as to keep the context of the overall world being generated in place. I did spend a couple days at this point teaching ChatGPT how to create prompts for Midjourney, feeding the chat any code, information, articles, and/or templates I could find. The result is an expanded map that includes the central theme, research findings, compiled prompt, and finally, the returned imagery. I will zoom in on a few and point out some of my favorites. Here we have the art section. You can see the flow of information that moves out from the central theme in each branch, tracing the overall path of the project from lit review to final imagery. This section, found within ecology, is the animal timeline, reimagining the species back in their natural habitats. Despite the remarkable images that Midjourney can generate, it appeared unable to reintegrate the extinct animals into their natural habitats. I also had to talk ChatGPT into generating the prompts. Several times I was informed that it was just not possible to write a prompt for an extinct animal in this manner. The photos on the left are the initial returns, void of any trace of animal life. The second set of images here are just a simple Midjourney prompt return of the animals. The final imagery was created either by teaching or tricking the AI, or pulling the empty habitat image into Photoshop and utilizing their generative AI, which was hit or miss. A few of my favorites. Back into the art section here. And here we get into the religion section. One last interesting note, every aspect ratio was 16:9, set by ChatGPT. Until this section here, the religious iconography. This was changed by the AI, as I did not interfere with the prompts in any way. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Matergenesis, a woman's world imagined.